Good evening, everyone. What a great turnout. This is fabulous. Been to some bigger areas, bigger cities, and when they call for a meeting like this, not so much. So it's a tribute to all of you that showed up, so thank you. Not sure where he's going to allow me to go with this, but I'll start out by just introducing myself. There's some people here who probably don't know who I am. I am Tom Casperson. I'm the state senator for the 38th Senate District, which is everything west of Newberry, Luce County. In my first run in the Senate, I had Luce County, and then redistricting got taken away from me. And so I've got Schoolcraft and Elgin and everything west of that. So I do take some liberties in Lansing, and when I'm introducing myself, I say I'm the senator from the Upper Peninsula. I represent the Upper Peninsula, even though I don't quite represent the whole thing. I try to take some liberties with that because VP is my home, so I have done that. But that's the district I have. My background, for those that might not know, I came out of the logging business. I was a log hauler for 27 years. I was in a family-owned business. I followed my grandfather and my dad in that business. Through at least half of it, I ran the business. My dad had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 57, and I ended up taking over. I'm 57, by the way, but that was a tough time for me, but we got through it, and so I ran the business up until 2002, and I ended up running for the House. The reason I ran for the House of Representatives over in 108th was really two reasons. One would be my faith and what I was seeing happening around the world and how government was kind of driving certain things, so that motivated me, and my industry. And what happened back in the late 90s going into 2000s, there was a fatal accident over in Township. I don't know if anybody here was familiar with that or not, but a young woman and her 2-year-old daughter were killed when wood came off a log truck and struck the vehicle, and they were killed. And I happened to be close to the family. I knew the family well, and it affected me. I mean, I was in the area that night. It wasn't one of my trucks, but it was my industry. And made some calls that night going home. We started a task force. We started working on solutions. Ultimately, the family that lost the loved ones actually got involved with us and helped us to get to a point where we could really make some changes in our industry to try and prevent something like that from ever happening again. The only entity that would not work with us was my government. And that really, really frustrated me. So in 2002, when that seat opened up, the 108th, I ran for that House seat, and one of the first bills I passed when I got to the House was the crib trailer legislation to allow the trucks to turn the wood around a crib and put end gates on the trucks. So you'd have to flip the truck over to get the wood out. That was really the way we should be going. But they didn't listen, and I was told that wouldn't happen, and I'm glad to report that it did happen. And so that people always ask me, you got a fire in the belly? And I was asked that when I ran in 2002. You got a fire in the belly? And it kind of irritated me because I thought, well, of course I do. You know, why wouldn't I? Of course I do. I'm running for office. I must. And I can tell you, after 12 years of serving 6 in the House and now 6 in the Senate, you shouldn't be running for office if you don't have a fire in the belly, because there are a few people that I run across down there that I don't think have much of a, if they've got a flicker, that'd be a lot. And what I find with that is the finger goes up in the air and you try to find which way the wind's blowing and then blow accordingly. We don't need that. So I push for anybody that's got passion. I don't care if you're on either side of the aisle. If you've got some passion, spit and vinegar in you, I think that's a good thing. So now in the Senate, I've served 4 years, and I'm in my second term, and the second year of my second term in the Senate. I've chaired transportation all the way through. I've chaired natural resources all the way through. Did have a change up in my second go around with committees. I now serve on finance, and I serve on family social services, which is a committee that I thought, boy, why did I end up here? I was trying to figure that out. And I'd say that's been one of the toughest committees I've ever served on, was family social services, with everything that's happening in our communities and in our state and in our country. A lot of issues are going through that committee, and it's really important that we pay attention. I cite that one because of the recent issue, and I don't want to assume where anybody's at, but just so you all know where I'm at, this whole issue from the Michigan Department of Education on the gender issue and their policy. There's been a lot of misinformation out there, and you'll notice that the media is only talking about the bathroom scenario where you're going to mix the biological differences with the boys and the girls, and that's all they talk about. I would encourage anybody to go look at that policy that was written by the Department of Education. It's way broader than that issue. As an example, a 7-year-old could go to a teacher and say, I am physically a boy, but I believe I'm a girl and I want to change my gender and I want to be called a girl's name. Under their policy, the teacher and the school administration must acknowledge that and call that child by that name. But if that child says to the teacher, but I don't want my mom and dad to know, according to that policy, they are not to tell the parents. And in fact, if the parents come in for a teacher-parent conference, they are instructed through the policy to call the child by the biological name for the conference, parent-teacher conference, and the following day go back to calling the child by the name that they've chosen for their gender. I think that itself is so overreaching. That's scary to think that they could even propose something like that. But that's in there. And so that's why I encourage people, please go look at it. If you care at all about your kids, your grandkids, and where we're headed, I think it's time to start paying a little attention. And you should be letting them know where you stand on it after you've studied and looked at it. It's not a hard read. Go look at it. They're even talking in the policy about setting up classes now in school that will start training, and I think the word they use, children on acceptance. So we're going to start teaching kids about this and get them to accept it. It sounds good on the surface, but a little concerned that, again, the educational system is going to start indoctrinating young children on the way they should think. And I think that's a parent's obligation. And parents need to step up. So encourage you to look at that. It's coming, and it's coming with a vengeance. In fact, you're hearing a lot about it all across the country. The other things we're working on we've got a bill right now that it's designed, in fact, I'm looking at if we can incorporate local units of government into it, but the focus of it was the individual citizen, where they have a dispute with the departments. Let's say a permit issue. You think you're entitled to a permit, the department doesn't want to give you the permit, could be a development project on your own property, and you read the rule, you read the law, and you believe you're entitled to that permit. If they don't give it to you and you go to court and you beat them in court, meaning the government, the department that was the obstruction in the process will pay for your attorney fees. And the reason for that is, the way I see it, there's no other way to level the playing field for the average citizen. Because you're up against the government, and the departments have the Attorney General's staff is their staff. So there's attorneys on board ready to take you on if they disagree with you. So how do we level the playing field so the citizen has an honest shake with said government? So we've reached an agreement. I think that's going to start running this week. I've been working with the administration on that, and they have started coming our way. Pretty excited about that, to agree that there needs to be a level playing field for the citizen out there with the government. So excited about that. Mentioned the congressional stuff. It's been busy. Oh my goodness, this is one big district, 32 counties. All the Upper Peninsula and all of northern Lower Michigan. You drop down to Leelanau County and go straight across, take in Grayling and go all the way to the East Coast. Everything north of that is the first district. It even takes in a little, it goes down into Manistee a little bit, takes a little sliver down there to make up the entire first district. So it is a mammoth. It's a statewide district, really, when you look at it. But it is split, the two peninsulas. So I got a feeling some of the folks that are running against me below the bridge are going to make that into an issue, and they believe that the seat should be held below the bridge because it hasn't in the past. Traditionally, it's always been UP. So I would just share with you that, of course, I'm a Uper, but I would ask, check us all out, pick the right person. Don't make it just about a peninsula. We need to get the right people in public office. I believe I'm that guy, so I am asking for your support. But I would encourage everybody to check everybody out and check the records out. And I would just say, any questions you ever have of me, please do not hesitate to call. I don't know, Al, is there time for some questions? Or
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Senator, one of the biggest issues around here years ago was power generation capacity. They're talking about shutting down a plant at Presque Isle and Marquette. This was going to cause a huge problem in the UP. You were quite involved with that. If you become our next senator in Washington, you'll have a lot more say on that. Your reflections on that issue?
Yeah, the question was, if you couldn't hear them, it was really about the energy issue that we're facing. We've got some people from ACC, and any tough questions, Brett will handle all of that. So I'll do that. No, you're bringing up a good question, and it is serious business right now, especially for, I should say out of the gate, the Upper Peninsula, but now Lower Michigan's also feeling the pinch and the pain on this whole thing. The future is, I wouldn't say bleak, but the future is questionable when it comes to energy and where we're going to get it from. And it's like this political battle. It just keeps going back and forth. What we're going to do? Are we going to build windmills? Are we going to build solar panels? Are we going to build gas-fired plants? What are we going to do? Transmission? Are we going to go with just transmission? And it's back and forth as to where we're going to go for our solutions. Presque Isle was just mentioned of going down. There's a proposal on the table, and I think the agreement's there to build a gas-fired scenario over by Cliffs that will offset what's going to happen there. But we don't really have the solution across the board for the whole Upper Peninsula. I, for one, would like to see all the above looked at as far as energy is concerned. I am not in favor of how they went about closing the coal-fired plants. I think it was terrible. I think they, quite frankly, the EPA. I would say, if just for a moment, if you think about it, if for a moment we could agree that coal-fired plants have to go away, think about how we go about that. Do you think it was better to just do like the EPA did, come up with a standard, which, by the way, the Supreme Court has struck down as being a standard unattainable, and so therefore it was designed to kill the coal-fired plants. But that aside, let's say we all agree. Would we not have been better off to come up with an honest-to-goodness standard of life cycle for these coal-fired plants, and then make it so that as they live their life out, they're done, that one goes away, and then have the conversation about how we're going to redo it. Are we going to come in with biomass? Are we going to come in with natural gas? Or all the above? And instead, what they proposed out of the gate is to shut them all down. And that's when Lower Michigan really woke up when they started looking at all the coal-fired plants they had. I don't think they could build them fast enough to replace what was happening. And so a policy coming from Washington literally was designed to throw us into turmoil, because there really wasn't a solution to the closures. It was just close them because we got to kill the coal-fired plant. So mentioned about going to Washington, I think the first order of business would be getting the EPA put in check. EPA is out of control. I believe they are. We have a lawsuit from the Upper Peninsula to the EPA. It's sitting in Grand Rapids right now. We're waiting for the judge to rule over what was called County Road 595, Northern Marquette County. The EPA objected to us building that road. You might think, well, what's the big deal? You know, there might be something wrong with it or something with the environment. Yeah, they made it about the environment. They said it was taking away some wetlands. I think it was a little over 20 acres of wetlands. And the proposal by the Marquette County Road Commission was to offer up 26-to-1 mitigation. The attorneys we talked to said that's the highest mitigation they've ever heard of in the country. The EPA rejected it. So it wasn't about wetlands. They didn't want the road built because it might promote mining in that area, and they were everything they could do to stop it. And it also would promote logging in that area. It would promote access for you and I to go and recreate in that area. So I think that was more what was going on. But we found out through the lawsuit, through the FOIA, that they had been communicating with Senator Boxer in California, the EPA. And they assured Senator Boxer through the email exchanges, the Hall Road in northern Michigan will not get built. What's interesting about the email exchange is that the date of it was just before Marquette County actually applied for the permit. They hadn't even applied for the permit, and the EPA was already saying they're not going to let the road get built. So then, on top of all that, knowing that now, they let all these people go through all that work to try and get to the permit process when their intentions behind the scenes were to never let it be built to start. That's how dastardly that whole process was. And at the same time that was going on, Wisconsin was looking at running legislation, much like we did in Michigan, Part 632, which allowed for money. Wisconsin was entertaining that because they had a huge deposit of iron ore on the west side of the Upper Peninsula, northern and east side of Wisconsin. And in those email exchanges between the EPA internally, they said that they looked at Wisconsin as their next front. What they meant by that, folks, was they were going to do everything in their power to stop Wisconsin from moving forward with their operation to go mining. That's our government making a decision like that, behind the scenes, not out in front where people can see it. And those are the big things, but they've gone after our outside wood boilers, They're going after the camps over in the National Forest on the west side of the UP. It's just one thing after another, and the way they're doing it is they raise a standard so high and unattainable, you kill that activity. And I think that's our problem, and we've got to find a way to stop that silliness and craziness, because our energy needs are there, and if there's any chance for growth, we've got to have a reasonable solution to those energy needs, and it can't be this crazy EPA stuff. You and I will be able to afford it, and that's where we're headed.
Good answer, sir.
That answer the question?
I think you did.
Okay. Any other questions? Hey, just a little advice. I've traveled this area for 12 years, back and forth to Lansing, and I would just recommend put your cruise control on coming through Mackinac County. Good job, guys. I know you are. You are very safe in Mackinac County, trust me. Any other questions? All's well on the East End. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Senator. So, if you were elected to Congress, would you see yourself joining the House Freedom Caucus by chance?
The House Freedom Caucus. What would I have to do to join?
It's it's Republican members, typically the Tea Party members mostly. Would you see yourself being a part of that group of Republicans or not?
I've already signed a no tax pledge.
Okay.
For Washington. I wouldn't sign it for Michigan because in Michigan it was so broad that if you even looked at a fee increase or anything, it was like you were demonized, and I thought that was inappropriate. We're there to govern. On the federal level, the tax pledge is about income tax. Would you raise the income tax? And I would not. I think there's too many problems in Washington that we need to start finding ways to downsize Washington, much like my attitude was on the state level, that a lot of the best governing that can happen is on a local level. And we've tried to push stuff that way. I think the same thing applies with Washington. There's so far overreaching, there's so much duplication. I think our goal should be elimination. And I've made the comment, you remember, some of you here are old enough that you would remember Ronald Reagan had proposed closing the Department of Education, eliminating it, and he wasn't able to get it done. So I've heard a lot of the candidates talk about that on our side of the aisle, that they're going to eliminate programs or departments in Washington. My suggestion would be pick one. Pick one. And the reason I say that is because, and I would probably pick the Department of Education for me, if I had that wand and I could pick which one it was to start with. And I only say that because I'm convinced if we could close one department, move it out, just like the president signs an order and starts a department, move one out. Let the governing take place at the state level. The public would see the sky didn't fall, the world didn't end as we know it, and life has gone on. I think if you could get that one accomplished, the sky's the limit from there. But if we go in with guns a-blazing saying we're going to kick the doors in and take it down in one sweep, I think we'll hand it over to the other side so fast it'll make our heads spin. And that would be my concern. I just think you got to go govern, you got to be reasonable. The problems we're faced with have happened over a course of time, and it's going to take some time to fix it. Go ahead.
The EPA has determined that any land that's standing water becomes a wetland. And in Chippewa County and part of Mackinac County, that's all playground, and we have a lot of water standing furrows that drains it, and yet at times of year there's water standing there. It gets harder and harder to qualify by those rules, and then the part, around Lake Erie, I'm not saying that there isn't some blame maybe for some of the fertilizers and so on, but that they're going way out of their way to destroy a lot of farmland in order to protect what an algae bloom or something.
You mentioned the waters. I think what you're talking about, they're calling it the waters of the U.S. The EPA is looking through rules again to take control over all the water. It used to be, in the way the statutes set it up, is the EPA controls navigable waters, not standing water in your backyard, not a little creek or a stream, but navigable water. And in my opinion, that's bad enough, the way they act, but okay, I can handle that. They have made a broad sweep stroke of the brush to say we're going to do the waters of the U.S. I sponsored a resolution, I did what I could. I sponsored a resolution on the state level, had support across the board. We sent that off to Washington saying, from Michigan, leave us alone. We don't want this. And other states did as well. Just think about something, folks. Even the DEQ, think about this for a minute. The DEQ has 2 departments when it comes to water. It has the Wetlands Division and the Waters Division. The Waters Division is the entity that oversees yours and mine, our drinking water, and what's coming out, and making sure that we drink safe water. That's kind of their world. Over here, the wetlands, that's the frog pond. That's the wetlands out here that we fight over sometimes and try to develop. I've got a case going in Mesquite right now. A guy's got a $5,000 fine thrown at him because the department deems he built a garage on his own property and he intruded on some wetlands with that said garage. So there was no after the fact permit, which they're allowed to do. And then he'd pay a small fine and they'd leave him alone and he'd be on his way. They chose not to give him that because that little bit of wetlands was so important, so critical. They had to give him a $5,000 fine, make him reclamate all the way around the garage he built on his own property. He can't even access it decent now with a trailer on his pickup. So the purpose of the garage is kind of null and void. And I could go on here all night with those type of examples of how they have hammered down on anybody that just whispers putting something in. You notice all those silk fences everywhere you go? Can't let a blade of sand or anything go down into the wetlands because somehow it's going to hurt it. But when it came to the drinking water, you still don't hear an outcry from the Waterways Division. And the EPA, also concerned about water, the USA Today came out with an article, 2,000 different municipalities across the country have lead levels in their water that are as close or equal to Flint. Have you heard anything from the EPA of outcries of having to go after whoever because of the bad water? It's just this silent nothing, but try to fill in a wetland. I think our priorities are upside down. I mean, if they're not concerned about the actual consumption of the water that you and I have, and that's not as high as a priority as what the frog pond is, I think we got things backwards. In fact, I've told people, I'm convinced what's happening is we have started worshiping the creation instead of the creator. And the creation now has almost become like a religion. And how do you rationalize that out? You can't, because it doesn't matter. You can't touch it, you can't develop it, you can't change it, because you're going to destroy nature. And that's the craziness that you see coming out of these departments. The EPA, number one in my book, with the craziness. But the waters of the U.S., they're going to decimate our farming community if they get their hands on that and can control it the way they are right now and go beyond that. I see nothing but trouble. So that'd be another fight for Washington. We've got to find a way to stop that. I hear a lot of lip service in Washington, bashing away on the EPA, but I don't see a lot of change. If it means cutting funding or something's got to change with that department. They're over the top. Thank you for having me tonight. Oh,
I just want to thank you, Senator, for your representation on the eastern end of the Upper Peninsula, including giving us funding for the work road right across a few years ago. As you said, we're not even in your district, and you had helped us out, you represented us. And also with the help with DEQ, once again, Equal Pet, Bay Road, Monkey Flower. I know you were of great assistance to us in that situation.
thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Just so everybody knows, I've been blessed with great people that work with me, and because of the team effort, including you, when we come to you with stuff, you're right there with us, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Senator, I got one closing question. It's kind of a loaded one. We've known each other for quite a while. If you get to Washington with the disconnect out there between the Republicans and Democrats, will you be voting for the people of your district or your party?
Yeah, I think if you couldn't hear him, he was asking, if you get to Washington, would you vote with your party or with the people of your district and work together? I would hope that if people looked at how we've governed the last 4 years, just in the UP as an example, In my Senate district, I have 3 House members. I have 1 Republican and 2 Democrats, and then myself. So it's really 2 and 2, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. I can tell you that if you look at how we've governed in the 38th Senate district, and we've tried to do it across the whole UP, there is no difference between us on the issues we agree on. So what I'm saying is, with my 2 Democratic colleagues in the House, whenever there's been an issue in our district that has been affecting our people and we both agree on the issue, we are rock solid. You can't separate us. And I'll tell you, the success is enormous. You know, when you look at, we had an issue with these state police towers, and we thought it was a good idea to allow the towers to be used for cell service and those type of things, because we thought that it's there. Why build another tower and go through that whole fight? Can it be done? Can we do it safely? And does it, to make sure it doesn't interfere with the 800 megawatts or megahertz or whatever they call it with state police, make sure we don't interfere with that. We were told it wouldn't. So we wanted the bill. A gal from Oakland County sponsored it. Didn't go anywhere. Sat in committee for a year. The governor's office called me and said, would your group take it up? And he's made the team in the 38, the 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, take it up. We think we can get it through if we have a bipartisan push. So I called everybody and he said, absolutely, we all agree on it. It would help. And within 2 months, that bill went through the House, the Senate, and on the governor's desk, and it sat there for a year. The way we did it was when we brought the bill up in the House committee, all 4 of us sat together, testified together as a team. Same thing in the Senate. And ultimately, the governor got it on his desk because we took the politics out of it and got people focusing on the policy side. Now, do we agree on everything? Of course not. There's been a lot of differences between us. But I've not found it productive for me to come home and tear them apart because we have that disagreement. I respect our differences, and that's the way it is. We did town halls together. We actually put people in the audience to ask very tough questions that we knew we were going to disagree on. And we did that for a reason. We wanted people to see how you can disagree respectfully, get along, still treat each other with respect, and let you see the differences. And our purpose when we did that was, it's up to you to decide at the ballot box who you're going to support. And if you like our ideas better than the other guy's ideas, great, we're going to win. But we've had a lot of success doing that. I'm not suggesting that going to Washington, it'll just happen like that and we'll see this bipartisanship, but I've never been good at the attack when it comes to going after the other side just for the sake of going after the other side. I'll challenge them all day long on issues where I disagree, but hopefully people would say I've done it respectfully, and I think we have a record now of being able to do that successfully in the 38th Senate District.
What is your opinion on the outlook for the state budget for this year and local funding?
Yeah, the outlook is okay. There's been some moderate growth. The good news is the position we're sitting in, we've been able to handle problems with the Flint issue without going into the red trying to do it. But just a quick reminder, when I came into office in 2010, it took some pretty tough decisions, and the local units took it on the chin. They did. But we had a lot of entities that had taken on the chin because we didn't have the money. And in fact, for 2 years before I got back into the Senate, so 08 to 09, 010, that period, if you remember, President Obama gave what he called stimulus money. You recall that? Well, what Governor Granholm did was she used some of that stimulus money and she plugged holes in our budgets. K-12 would be the biggest one I can think of. So when we came in 2010, no more money, $1.4 billion hole, we have got to balance the books. We had no choice. And so we did. And it was tough because there was votes that went through with only 19 people when there should have been 20 voting for those budgets. And the one that stands out to me is the K-12 budget. That should have had 20 votes, and we only had 19. And Brian Calley broke the tie. And it was very unpleasant. I came back home after voting for that budget, which I thought was a conservative thing to do. We don't have the money. And that money was stimulus money given to the schools from Washington, and it was only one-time money. It was not going to be there when we came into office. Gone. So we did do that. I did 16 town halls in my district alone explaining that vote. But those were the tough decisions we had to make, which, because we made those decisions back then, I think stabilized the state of Michigan. It gave us hope to come back. And you can see the resurgence. You can see us coming back. And now, instead of deficits, we have a little bit of surplus, which has allowed us to do those things. I'd like to see it faster, higher, but we're not there yet. And I think we just got to keep pressing forward. Thanks for having me tonight. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the senator, and he's not been our senator, but to me, he's been my senator. I call Kendra more than I call Senator Walker's aide, and he's done more for Hudson Township than any of the others. Just the swamp tax for our community, 87% of Hudson Township is state land. So when we were down to 84 cents an acre. Our senator got us up to $1 to $1.50. We're now at $2 an acre. What does that mean for Hudson? That $2 an acre, that's 60% of our general fund budget is that swamp tax. And I know there was a huge impact also for Hendricks. And if you have pill, Fred, you have a huge amount of pill. This is the main thing. And also, we've all had trouble with our EMS